Hey, it's me Samin again, and today we are going to look at the basics of web application, or basically how the web applications work. So, first of all, let's understand what is a web application. So, web application is a piece of software that can be accessed from a browser, and we all know what a browser is. Browser is an application we use to browsing the internet. Just like here you can see Chrome, Edge, Firefox, etc. The examples of browsers. Let's assume our web application as a web server. There are differences in the sense that a web server can host multiple web applications, but for understanding the concept, let's call it a web server. So, web server basically is a network application listening on some ports. We can also call the browser web client or user agent. There are not only browsers, any application that can speak to a web server is called a web client or user agent. Just like here you can see curl or telnet, etc. To communicate with each other, both sides uses same sort of rules, which is called protocol. Some standard protocols are HTTP, FTP, etc. Each of these protocols are suitable for different kind of tasks. FTP is used for basically transferring files, but the HTTP protocol is most used protocol. Most of the time, the web client and the web server talk to each other in HTTP protocol. We are going to talk in details about HTTP protocol. In case you are finding it hard to understand, you can think the web client and server as two different persons and think the HTTP protocol as the language of their communication, like English. It will make the concept easier, and you will understand the concept easily. So HTTP is like a conversation between computers that lets you request and receive web pages and other data from the internet. So HTTP protocol requests and retrieves data from web resource. So let's understand what's a web resource. So web resource is basically something you can find and interact with on the web. So let me give a few examples here. Web pages, images, files, videos, PDFs, JSONs, API, etc. are the examples of web resources. So a web client can access those documents through a web server. Web resources are of two kinds. They are basically static or dynamic. So the static web resource doesn't change. So the examples can be like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or image files. The static resources don't change, and the dynamic resources are like news feeds, online forums, weather updates, etc. These are basically generated instantly. So suppose the web client wants an image, so it first will request that I want a image to the web application, and the web application then will request the image to the web resource. The web resource will give the image to the web server, and after that the web server will respond with an image to the web client, and this is how the web client will get his desired request. But the image is a static resource, so this is how the process will be done. But suppose the web client wants a dynamic resource, like suppose you want to know about the weather update, so how can you do it? So if you want a weather update, you will first request the web server that I want the weather update of that particular place, and the web application will now talk with the web resource that the web client wants a weather update. And because the weather update it's a dynamic resource, it will be generated like instantly, and the web resource will give the generated weather update, or the weather update of the place the web client requested, and it will take the weather update and give it to web client in a form of like JSON document or XML document or HTML document. The web application will embed it, and the web client will get his. Now let's talk about URL for a brief time. So each web resource is identified by an unique URL. Here the HTTP basically is the protocol, and the www.example.com is the web server, and the rest you see is the path of the resource in the web server. So this was some basics about URL. Now let's again talk about HTTP. HTTP protocol is basically request response protocol. So the way it's done is, whenever the web client needs to read, upgrade, delete, or create a new resource, the web client first establishes a connection with the web server where the resource is hosted. After that, web client sends a request to it. Request basically contains the information of what he wants from the web application or the web server. While the web server receives the request, it responds with the web application response. The response basically depends on what the client requested. As you can see here, the client is sending a request, and the web application is sending a response. There can be various responses like 200 OK or 404 etc. We will talk about the status codes on other videos. After the response is given to the web client, the connection is closed. Web server forgets everything about the past connection. Next time when the client sends request to the web server will treat it as a new server. Because of this nature, it's called a the HTTP is called a stateless protocol. So this was all about how a web application works. So if I want to give a summary or overview, so basically the web client sends a request, and depending on the request, if it's static or dynamic, the web application gives a response to the web client. If it's static, it's gives it instantly, and if it's dynamic, the resource or the response is generated instantly, and after that the server responds the requested document to web client. So this was basic overview of how web app works. So it was all from me today. I will be back with more videos. Till then, keep liking them and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye.